No, it's definitely not right.
Hold on. It's fine. I don't know why. Look, he can't even put me in charge of pushing the button.
No,
At pushing the button, I screwed up.
one job.
All I had to do was push the button.
Push the button. Just push the button.
With the lime and the coconut. Why is that? This is where my mind went. Good morning. I think we should start doing this in different places. Like outside, on the porch, in the living room.
Oh, it's too hot outside. It's way too hot outside.
What is today?
It's Friday.
Oh, happy Friday. Hope everybody's had a good week. You have no idea where you are, what you're doing, do you?
No, you know what I realized the other day? I finally got all the videos uploaded to YouTube, but I ain't shared them on Facebook.
Oh, nobody watches them anyway.
Well, when they're on Facebook, like maybe like 2 people will like kind of half look at it.
It's okay.
Um,
It gives us a purpose.
I need to do that today.
I'm not sure why, but I feel like my coffee is hotter than normal today.
So much stuff. What are we doing?
Coconut oil. Coconut oil.
Alright, you got your phone and stuff ready?
Oh, you gotta get it ready. That's why I don't push nothing. I'm a catastrophe waiting to happen. If it's gonna go wrong, it's gonna be me. Okay, let's wait on him to get it ready because it's all his fault. We start Joshua today, right? Okay.
So, you know, if we were doing this every day like we're supposed to, we would be on day 204. But instead we're on day 50 something? Well, you and I are on day 81. But
We've had some days.
videoing it,
Yeah,
we're on day 51.
I don't see how any of that matters.
I'm just saying.
No, you're complaining.
I'm not complaining at all.
Why can't it be a positive thing?
It is I'm just saying. I'm just spitting facts.
I think I would just stop at spitting.
I'm just.
The setting for the book of Joshua, the first 5 books of the Bible provide background for the book of Joshua. The people's preparation began in Genesis with the promise of the land to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Preparation continued as for 2 centuries. Abraham's descendants lived in the land, but never fully controlled it.
We're on day 53, by the way. Today's day. Welcome to day 53 of Coffee and Christ. Today is Friday, the 30th.
He just showed up. Did you see that? Okay, so the date for this book of Joshua. The book of Joshua covers approximately 30 years during what is now called the Late Bronze Age. The actual invasion.
Hold on. Okay.
Probably occurred about 1405 BC during the reign of something I can't say in Egypt. So we're about to go into the land of Canaan, right?
Yep. Oh, and Angela's got her birthday coming up. Let's see. Let's see. You were turning 40. Let's see, how old am I?
I will.
She'll be 47 years old. Man, that's 30 years to 50.
I know I can see it.
Man, I still got a long way to go to get
I think that's perspective. You better have you make it. The quest of the land, preparation for conquest is pretty much what we're going to read. What all we have today?
We got Joshua 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I've got a chart.
Okay, let's see, we're already 6 minutes into it.
Alright, sorry. We're babbling today.
Okay, here we go. Joshua 1. Jose 1.
The book of Joshua, chapter 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised to Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never...
Does that not make you clearly, when you read that, does that not make you think of all the uproar in Israel right now? And for years, is that not just clear when you read that? Like, it's potential spam. Somebody's probably trying to sell me some extended car warranty. But I mean, when you hear that, does that not clearly say what the borders are?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry.
there's nothing that.
It definitely gives the boundary. Was Cassie just trying to come in the front door?
I think so. Did you lock it? Oh, he's already coming in the front door. Anyway, I just wanted that just struck me.
leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you after he said, the Lord your God will give you rest by giving you this land. Your wives, your children, and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan. But all your fighting men, ready for battle, must cross over ahead of your fellow Israelites. You are to help them until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, and until they too have taken possession of the land the Lord your God is giving them. After that, you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses the servant of the Lord gave you east of the Jordan toward the sunrise. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us, we will do. And wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses,
Be strong and courageous was said multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Show what?
What do you have for that?
Let's see. Joshua may have been devastated by the death of Moses, a close friend, mentor, and father figure. But he was immediately thrust into a leadership role for which he undoubtedly felt unworthy and unprepared. It says, how could Joshua ever fill the shoes of the man who had talked to God face to face? Joshua dared not show fear before the people, or they would have lost confidence in his ability to lead them to victory. He needed to demonstrate a bold obedience to God's commands in order to ensure success. Joshua was able to do this because he was willing to seek God and surrender to him. In his new role as commander-in-chief of Israel's armies, Joshua commanded the subordinates to prepare their people for the new difficult venture that lay before them. He then reminded the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh of their promise to Moses to fight side by side with their fellow Israelites with all the land that had been conquered. Joshua was understandably concerned to find out whether they would stand with the main body of the people or defect from them. If they defected, war might have broken out, or at the very least, discouragement might have set in among the rest of the people of Israel. We need to continue to guard ourselves against discouragement as well, so that our spiritual growth will not be stifled. That's all I've got for that.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah.
Then Joshua son of Nun secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go, look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, you may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. She said to them, go to the hills, so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way. Now the men had said to her, this oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless when we enter the land you have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. And unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers and all your family into your house. If any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own heads. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in the house with you, their blood will be on our head, if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear. Agreed, she replied. Let it be as you say. So she sent them away, and they departed. And she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days, until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the two men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the river, and came to Joshua son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." Joshua.
My.
It says, Joshua wisely determined to discover the strength of his enemies. The people of the city of Jericho, before setting out to encounter them in battle, Rahab, a prostitute and citizen of Jericho, also made a wise decision when she took a stand for the God of Israel by assisting and protecting the spies sent by Joshua. It says, Rahab displayed courage when she turned away from the security and praise of the world she knew and risked following the true God, of whom she knew little. It always takes courage to make changes in our life, especially when those changes take us into the unknown. Rahab willingly surrendered to the God of Israel. She and her people saw no way of escape from the certain doom that was coming. Instead of making a futile attempt to escape, Rahab sought mercy from the only source of help available. It says, we too must recognize that we cannot escape God's impending judgment of our sin. Our only hope is to seek mercy from God, who is more than willing to grant this through his Son, Jesus Christ. Rahab completed her task by helping the spies by providing them with a rope, a window hidden from sight, and a plan. Hide for 3 days in the hills until it's safe, for their safe return to their people. The spies in turn established the ground rules and responsibility for Rahab and her family. They outlined the specific requirements of the relationship and the rewards for success or punishment for failure. Rahab is an excellent example of how God can use each of us, no matter how terrible our past or how unworthy we may feel.
Okay, so what stood out to me was when she said it's 11. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. So she's admitting that God is over all.
Yes.
There is a section about Rahab here, but what I wanted to read was Rahab. Is that how you say that? Rahab. We're gonna go with Rahab.
Rahab is how he said it.
Rahab is a role model for making the right decisions and standing firm, even when it means going against your own peers. No wonder God wanted to honor her faith and courage by placing such a woman in the line of the Messiah. Boaz, one of the most gentle and godly men in the Old Testament, was her offspring. God honored Rahab's faith and courage by placing her in the lineage not only of Israel's great King David, but also of Jesus, the King of Kings. It says, Book of Ruth, through the chart, the family tree. Jesus, what is this? What's MT stand for?
I don't know.
Matthew, maybe?
Matthew.
I want to see what this
Is it Matthew 1:5?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, Matthew.
Yeah, it says Solomon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. So that by her being there, she actually, you know, they said that we covered if the people, the foreigners, if they had come across, or the people that lived in these lands wanted to worship our God, you know, that they could do so. Well, this is one of those situations where, I mean, somebody was converted to Christianity, to following God, and that, what a huge role.
Excuse me.
I mean, she was a prostitute, so that's that's a huge key.
I've got a deal on the virtuous prostitute here, kind of the same thing, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. Rahab, however, showed that her heart was open to God. Unlike others in Jericho who merely saw the Israelites as military opponents, Rahab perceived a people who had been unequally chosen by God. Yeah. She chose to help them at great personal risk. For this, she was given a place in the ancestry of the Messiah, Matthew 1:5, and a citation in the Faith Hall of Fame. By faith, Rahab rose above her background and ended up playing a key role in the history of God's people.
And she's the only, I don't think there's another mother listed by name. It's the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. That's one. Perez, father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Aminadab, Aminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Solomon, Solomon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. That's two. Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Three. Because there's a book on Ruth, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. The book of Ruth.
David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife, but there's no name. It keeps going and going, but there's no other women. Those are the only three women listed in the genealogy of Jesus. Interesting.
Joshua 3.
3. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. See, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet, as soon as the priests who carried the Ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of the Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground.
Wow.
Joshua.
That's like, it was like parting the sea.
Well, I don't think he won up Moses, but it was close. How many are we doing today?
4.
Okay.
These were anxious times for Joshua and the people. They set out on their trek to the promised land, but then had to delay their entrance into the land for 3 full days while their leader gave them instructions. Those instructions dealt with both the physical and spiritual realms. The people were commanded, 1, to remain approximately a half mile behind the Ark of the Covenant when the priests carried it. They were not to try and run ahead of God, but were to receive their direction from Him. And 2, to dedicate themselves to God. They were to commit themselves to obeying Him. No doubt it was difficult then, as it is now, to follow God's plan rather than rebel and go our own way. God would drive out the enemies of Israel if the Israelites were obedient to Him. Furthermore, in order for the people to see the power of God at work, the priest, acting by faith, had to carry the Ark of the Covenant and step into the Jordan River. Would God leave Joshua looking foolish, or would God act in a way He had promised? Josh did not doubt God and had the priests stand in the water. The Jordan River was at flood stage and hence extremely dangerous, if not possible, to cross without God's help. Often God places us at a point where we must either stand for Him or show that we don't really trust Him. If we trust in God, we can be sure that He will never disappoint us.
You know, this was like, so Moses, who has done everything, like this was the dude, you know. Here's Joshua, and you know there had to have been somebody, there had to have been a number of the Israelites that were thinking, really, you know, we're about to go into battle. You know what I'm saying? And and Joshua, who was second in command all this time, is going to be doing these, leading us in. And then, I mean, he had to do something. So when God said, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses," there had to be something. He had to make a statement to prove his point, because faith comes with results sometimes. Can you imagine priests just stepping foot in the water and everything just...
Well, when they were leaving Egypt, I couldn't imagine the sea.
Seas? Yeah.
The sea part.
But I mean, as far as how everybody must have, like, can you imagine being one of the priests carrying just, wow.
Yeah, it's been amazing for sure.
Before, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, 1 from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you, and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, 1 from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites. Israelites, as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him all the days of his life, just as they stood in awe of Moses. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Command the priests carrying the ark of the covenant law to come up out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priests, "Come up out of the Jordan." And the priests came up out of the river, carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner had they set their feet on the dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, 'Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground.' For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea, when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God."
So I guess the stones are still there?
I don't know. I was going to Google it. The priests faithfully remained standing in the riverbed until the entire nation of Israelites had crossed into the promised land. Joshua, at the command of God, then sent 12 men back to the place where the priests were standing. Those men were to collect one stone per tribe to set up as a memorial that would remind them, their children and their children's children, of what God had done on their behalf as they moved into the promised land. The stones would serve as a visible reminder of God's great power should the people ever become discouraged when they faced powerful enemies in the future. It says, as God grants us maturity in our spiritual journey, we ought to establish reminders or moments of God's presence with us. Joshua took a direct interest in remembering the greatness of God and honoring the faith of the priests by personally erecting a permanent memorial in the middle of the river. And at the end of the crossing, God raised Joshua to a new status in the eyes of the people. It says he was honored in the same way that his predecessor Moses had been. Sometimes it helps to commemorate events in which God provides a way when everything appeared hopeless. Then we can reflect on our moments of God's faithfulness when we encounter times of doubt. Israel's leaders set up a monument to God at Gilead with the stones from the Jordan River. Joshua explained that this would serve as a reminder of the miracle God had done, the drying up of the flooded Jordan River. It says the miracle was reminiscent of the way God delivered Israel 40 years earlier when he let his people cross the Red Sea on dry ground. We must remember that God is all-powerful and cares for us. Knowing that God has rescued us in the past can help us trust his ability in saving us today.
What an amazing, wow. There's Puppy. Yeah, he had to, I think, there they are, right? Mm-hmm. So they've made it all this way with Moses, and this is their first act with Joshua. So he had to, you know what, like he had to bring it.
Because, they had to show up and show out.
Yeah, because they were about to go to war. So he had to bring it in order to keep the momentum, I guess.
Yeah, it's a show. There we go.
Hey Bible readers, I'm Tara Lee Cobble, and I'm your host for the Bible Recap. books of the law yesterday, and we've already hit one of the wisdom books when we read Job. Today we step into the first of the history books. As we read through these, remember
She went bye-bye.
that their goal isn't so much to reveal history as it is to reveal God. So keep looking for him. Yesterday, Moses died after 40 years of leading the Israelites through the wilderness. This was probably around 1400 BC, which is roughly 2,500 years after we first met Adam and Eve. Before Moses dies, he passes the torch to his assistant Joshua, the man God appointed to lead the people into the promised land. Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim, which was the smallest non-Levite tribe at this point, so it's a pretty big deal that he gets this role. Both God and the Israelites tell Joshua to be strong and courageous. He hears that 4 times in one chapter alone, 3 times from God and once from the people. He heard it from above and from below, from his leader and from his followers. It's already a big deal when God repeats himself, but when everyone around you is also telling you the same thing, you know it's something you need to hear. As they prepare to head into Canaan, Joshua reminds the 2.5 Transjordan tribes, Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, that they still have to cross the Jordan and fight for the land like all the other tribes. Then they can come back east and live in the pasture lands they requested from God back in Numbers 32. They agreed to do all Joshua commands them, just like they did with Moses, which honestly doesn't sound like a great promise. These people are pretty forgetful if they really thought they obeyed Moses, but whatever. Joshua sends 2 spies into the promised land. Remember, he was a spy once, along with 11 others, and he probably knew what kind of man made a good spy versus what kind would come back terrified and unbelieving. He sends the spies to Jericho, a city that's just across the border in the Jordan River, because it will be a logical first step in taking the promised land. The first thing the spies encounter when they get to Jericho are the city walls. The wall was probably a double wall, and it was common for poor people, like Rahab the prostitute, to build their homes in the narrow space between those 2 walls. The spies had 2 primary goals on this trip: stay safe and get a good view of the city's layout. What better place to accomplish both of those goals than a rooftop on the edge of the city? You'll find lots of people who think the spies are staying at Rahab's house for reasons that are not so honorable, but to me, it seems more locationally strategic than anything. Plus, the text doesn't give us any reason to think they have ill intentions, and from what we've seen so far of the Bible, it doesn't hesitate to tell us the ugly truths. Other historical texts suggest Rahab also ran a hotel of sorts, so that could be the reason they stayed there. Plus, what we see about Rahab is that even though she's a Canaanite prostitute, she seems to fear Yahweh. She says the fear of the Israelites has fallen on her people, which is the fulfillment of something God promised in Exodus 15 and 23. She seems to have a real faith in the God of Israel and knows what he is capable of. She's heard stories of something God did hundreds of miles away, 40 years earlier, and this was all before the internet. I know word travels, but that is crazy to me. Think about it this way. If you live in America, can you tell me off the top of your head one thing that happened in Canada 40 years ago? Probably not. But Rahab has heard about how God led them across the Red Sea on dry land, which is a story they seem to often forget themselves. Rahab is praised twice in the New Testament, in Hebrews and James, for the way she lived out her faith. Not only that, but she's included in the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew 1, which is kind of a big deal. Rahab's understanding and fear of Yahweh leads her to do something that you may struggle with if you're a rule keeper at all costs. She lies to the king's men and says the spies aren't at her house. Meanwhile, she's hiding them on the roof. Does this remind you of anything we've seen before? It made me think of what we read in Exodus 1:15 through 21, where the Egyptian midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, refused to kill the Hebrew babies and possibly lied to Pharaoh about it, and God blessed them. Rahab lied to the king's men and sent the spies to hide in the hills. The spies make a deal with her for saving their lives. When they come to take Jericho, she and her family should throw a red rope out her window so they can easily identify her home and make sure to spare her and her family. Remember this moment, because we're going to encounter a lot of wartime language in Joshua where God tells the Israelites to destroy all the people in the land of Canaan, and it's going to be important important for us to remember that this is not genocide or ethnic cleansing that God is calling for. This has nothing to do with their ethnicity and everything to do with the fact that they were idolaters who did things like child sacrifice, and God was bringing judgment on their sins, but he was always willing to spare the repentant. Anytime someone repented, even a prostitute, they were kept alive and welcomed to live among the Israelites. God isn't calling for the wholesale slaughter of the Canaanites. There are obvious exceptions that we'll see in the text, and Rahab and her family are among them. I also want to point out one thing about these two spies. They believe God's promise. That's another reason why I think they were honorable in their actions toward Rahab. In 2:14, they told Rahab, "When the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." Not only do they believe God is going to bless them as he said, but they're already planning on paying that blessing forward. So the spies go back to Joshua and give him the good news, and Joshua rallies everyone to cross into the promised land. Finally. Okay, here we go. They put the Ark of the Covenant way out front, like half a mile ahead, carried by the Levite priests. Then they all follow behind. And guess what happens? They hit a river. But no big deal. This has happened to their parents, and they've heard stories about how God came through. I mean, even the Canaanite prostitutes have heard that story. Last time they had to cross a body of water, God stopped the water before they entered. But this time, the water doesn't stop until they step into it. Walking with God requires increasing amounts of obedience and trust. In 3:17, just as they're crossing over, God calls Israel a nation for the first time. This has been promised since way back in Genesis 12:2. Up until this point, they were just a people, but now they're a nation. God has fulfilled that promise to them. God tells them to set up 12 stones, one for each tribe, because even the Transjordan tribes came to help take the land like they promised. These stones would serve as a reminder for them and for their children, so they won't forget what God did here. Not only that, but in 4:24, God says all of this is so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. The miracle of God's provision for Israel was an invitation to all people groups to know and fear him. And speaking of provision, if you remember anything about the Hebrew calendar, you may have noticed what day they set foot in the Promised Land. It's the day that preparation for the Passover celebration begins. That means we've got some big stuff coming up in the days ahead, so stay tuned. What was your God shot today? I noticed something that kept showing up in chapter 1 when God was telling Joshua to be strong and courageous. It does take strength and courage to be obedient, but every time God commanded that, he preceded it or followed it with the promise that he would be with Joshua. It's a reminder that strength and courage aren't just things we muster on our own. It's not just some mental pep rally or some mindset we meditate our way into. True strength and courage is established by being mindful of God's presence in our lives. He never asks us to do things on our own. His nearness is what equips us to obey. And he never asks us to be our own strength or provision. He provides all that he requires of us. He's where the strength is, he's where the courage is, and he's where the joy is.
I don't know. I think for me, today's reading was Rahab.
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 Well, Rahab's a Westerner way of saying it. Rahab.
I like
is a
Rahab. It's
foreigner.
easier. It just flows.
You just like it because it's more like rehab.
No. No. It really stuck out because she was a prostitute, and so repentance is the answer no matter who you are.
Yeah, Rahab was the prostitute. Rehab was not.
Rahab.
Rahab was not. Rahab was. I don't know who Rahab is.
Rahab. Rahab.
All right, I think I think it takes a lot of faith to blindly trust something that you can't see.
It's walking in faith,
And
being led blindly.
I wasn't. I'm not a perfect person, but I struggle with it a lot. Like when you're needing something to come through, and one day you'll tell yourself, hey, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. Just pray about it. Tell God I'm not even going to stress about it. I'm not even going to think twice about it. And then next day you're like, oh, how come this hadn't happened yet? You know, what the crap's going on? You know, it's like.
That's why that term, give it to God is like, it's easy to say, but it takes obedience to do it.
Yeah, and I can only imagine stepping into the Jordan River just to, you're like,
The thought of that, can you imagine? Just like, but like she said, they had to put their foot in it.
But, Joshua, I think, but Joshua, you know, just for him to, like, he's in command of a nation of people.
40,000
there's 40,000 fighters.
fighters. So can you imagine how many people?
Yeah. So you know he's brand new man on the block. Well, I mean they know who he is already, but he's brand new commander in chief of a nation, and his very first act is to have him cross the Jordan.
That's at flood
You know?
stage.
Yeah, and you know so he had to do some real meditating, I bet, talking to God, like really have a conviction and going into that and have, man, it's hard for me to have 100% faith in anything, you know, much less have 100% faith that I'm fixing to put my people in that water and we're fixing to watch it split or stop.
Or that he didn't know what he would. He said that, well, he did say the water will raise into a heap. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah, raise it to a heap, so basically stop.
So that's what he was
Stop,
looking
like,
for.
Dam up. So, I don't know, it's tough. Anyhow. Alright, sorry. Let me see how big it is. Okay, let's close it out.
Okay.
Alright. Lord Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for blessings. Thank you for everything that you've blessed us with, Lord. We know that you're a faithful God who does no wrong, and that you alone lead us. Lord, we ask that you just be with us as we go through this day. Basically, you guide and direct us, keep us safe, forgive us of all of our sins, Lord, and just bless us and continue to bless us with everything. We give thanks to you in your Son Christ's name. Amen. All right.
Hope everybody has a great weekend.
Yep. Have a great Friday. We'll see y'all on the next day.